Imagine, if you will. The year is 2008, and you are hard at work at LucasArts. You have just released what appears to be the fastest selling Star Wars game ever, The Force Unleashed. The critics seem to love it, praising its focus on going crazy with the Force, and even talking about how well put together its story is. The fans have seemingly fallen in love with your new characters like Starkiller, Coda, and Juno, and everyone keeps talking about how satisfying the ending of the game is, with the good ending being a suitable transition into the original trilogy, and the dark ending being a gut-wrenching, tragic ordeal. Sure, some things are being criticized. The combat might be a little repetitive at times. The dueling system could have probably used just a few touch-ups, and maybe reusing the same planets halfway through was a little lazy. But all in all, thanks to the attention to detail and care involving the story, and just the overall fun of many of the Force mechanics, it's clear that you and your team's hard work is greatly appreciated by the fandom as a whole. And given that Starkiller met an epic death at the end of the game, not only does it make sure that he doesn't too directly impact the original trilogy's story, but now the character itself can respectfully be laid to rest, and you can move on to work on something new. Or can you? You see, while everyone was rushing to do the final steps needed to ship the game, the executives had been talking. Before the game had even hit the shelves, they already knew they had something special here, and even George Lucas himself was excited to see where this new series could go. So, before anyone even had their hands on the first game, the executives had already greenlit the sequel. Now, you and your fellow LucasArts employees might have some reservations about this. I mean, the ending was pretty well wrapped up with Starkiller's heroic sacrifice, and you wouldn't want to undermine that. Nor would you just want to toss in another random guy who also has insane powers, since that would make Starkiller less special, and really start to mess with the already convoluted power scaling of the Star Wars universe. But even with all these issues, you sit back in your chair relieved, since at the very least, the project manager and writer of the first game, Hayden Blackman, has actually agreed to stay on and write the sequel. And if he was able to write a story as good as the first one, then given enough time to sit down and really think about the series' direction, he would be sure to come up with some amazing new ideas, rich characters, and... Wait, what's that? The higher-ups are only giving him 3 weeks to write the story? Well, son of a bitch! So The Force Unleashed 2 is a strange game for me to talk about. You see, I had played the original a few times before, but until now I had actually never sat down and played the second one. I mentioned in my retrospective of the first game that as a kid I just wasn't that interested in most standard hack and slash games, and instead just went back to the Jedi Knight series whenever I wanted that Jedi action kick. However, with that said, I did enjoy the first game's story quite a bit, and after replaying it as an adult, I think it's actually one of the better Star Wars video game stories out there. Maybe that's just because my bar for good Star Wars is lower now than it used to be, unfortunately, but either way, the first game was solid through and through. And since I feel like my opinion on the first game is far better now than it was when I was a kid, I was really interested in seeing what I felt about the second one. I mean, I'd heard some pretty negative things about it, but figured maybe people were just kind of overreacting, as us gamers are sometimes known to do. But then I started to look into the development of the game, and oh man did those red flags start showing. Everything you wouldn't want to see was there. Starting in 2008, right around the release of the first game, Daryl Rodriguez became president of LucasArts, and quickly started laying off large amounts of the management and veteran employees alike. In total, around 1/3 of the staff was cut between 2008 and 2010, sending many projects into just utter chaos. He also began to quickly sever relationships with external studios like Free Radical, the developers for Battlefront 3, by setting unreachable goals that he could then use as an excuse to not pay them during the development of the game. And eventually, this is what was responsible for the game's cancellation. This corporate insanity affected almost every aspect of LucasArts, with many employees saying that it had become a shell of its former self. As you would expect, this change in leadership also impacted The Force Unleashed 2. Not only was Hayden Blackman only given 3 weeks to write the story, but the game itself was only able to have around 9 months of active development. Because of this, no massive overhauls of the mechanics could be made, and instead all they could do was just polish up the existing features of the first game. Moves similar to this were not uncommon in LucasArts history, with the prior president, Jim Ward, being known as a very demanding leader who made quite a few cuts and was a pain for external developers to deal with Battlefront 2 and Knights of the Old Republic 2 also being given a very short development time. But this new president seemed to really exacerbate the company's problems even more. Because of this, the morale was at an all-time low throughout the company, And before the game was even released, even Hayden Blackman had left LucasArts in order to pursue his own personal projects. Of course, it is worth mentioning that writers and producers do sometimes leave companies as the game is in its final stages and the core work has already been completed. And Hayden did say that his departure had nothing to do with the problems at LucasArts. However, I have worked a lot in the corporate world, and I can say with 99% confidence that when someone at the upper management level leaves a company, you will rarely publicly hear the real reasons why they left. So I'm sorry, but I just can't help but speculate. Funny thing though, if you had been looking at the marketing for the game, you really would never have expected that all this was happening behind the scenes. I mean, the trailers seemed awesome, and it appeared to have a deep personal story for Starkiller that would explore the depths of who he is as a man and emphasize his relationship with Juno.
Misguided.
Hide not from yourself.
Accept the certainty
Confront your fear.
that all is lost.
Will I ever see you again?
Now, for those of you who don't know, before I begin a game that I plan on making a video for, I usually go back and look at some of the trailers and old marketing materials to kind of get myself in a mindset of someone who just bought the game back then. And since I never played The Force Unleashed 2 before, I'll be honest, the marketing for this game got me pretty hyped to start it up.
Where is she?
Obey me, or she dies, apprentice.
What happened? Where is he?
I mean, these are some awesome trailers. Again, the production seemed like hell, and I heard some pretty rough opinions on the game before, but if it was even half as good as what these trailers seemed to be, then I figured I was probably in for a good time. And by this point, after watching them, I was just excited as could be to finally get to form my own opinions on it. And oh boy did I. I should also point out before we start that all this was recorded on my old dusty Xbox, since apparently the Steam version of the game is just utter garbage. All I can really say about it myself is thank God for Steam's refund policy, because I was having all sorts of weird texture issues and crashes with it. And if you look at the reviews on Steam, it is clearly a widespread problem. Also, the Steam version doesn't even have the DLC for the game. I mean, really, what the hell, guys? Anyway, without further ado, why don't we go ahead and start this game up to see what makes The Force Unleashed 2 such a divisive game for so many people. So, like always, we start with the opening credits, this time simply telling us that the Civil War is about to really kick off, thanks in large part due to Starkiller's sacrifice in the first game. Unfortunately though, it does appear Coda has been captured by the Imperials, so the rebels at this point seem pretty powerless and have actually gone into hiding. Meanwhile, Vader has been secretly busy implementing his plan to destroy his former apprentice's legacy. Overall, it's pretty short and rather vague, and that's mostly because none of it really matters. Very little mentioned here will be explained or expanded on by the end of the game, so it simply does its job at setting the scene in the most bare-bones fashion possible, which is perfectly fine to do, so long as what comes next can really set those story hooks in to keep us engaged. And the start here is pretty strong, showing Vader making his way to Kamino in his iconic TIE Advance. I've always really enjoyed Kamino and felt even in episode 2 it had this evil aura to it. So seeing it in control of the Empire feels really fitting and bridges the prequel and original eras quite well.
You're alive.
How long this time?
13 days in isolation. Impressive.
The Force gives me all I need.
The Force?
The dark side. My master.
Come. Starkiller's Jedi mentor has been captured.
General Hoda.
Yes. When your training is complete, you will travel to Cato Nemoidia and execute him.
Vader thinks he's turned you, but I can sense your future. And Vader won't always be your master.
You are still haunted by visions.
Yes, Master. I sometimes smell a forest on fire. I see the general falling, and I feel the ground shake as a starship crashes around me. I hear a woman's voice when I try to sleep.
They are memories of a dead man, a side effect of the cloning process and the memory flashes used to train you. They will fade.
And if they don't,
Then you will be of no use to me. Starkiller's emotions made him weak. You must destroy what he created. And you must learn to hate what he loved.
Okay, so not a terrible start so far. A little abrupt for my taste, of us just kind of expected to roll with the sudden revelation of Starkiller once more being under Vader's thumb, but the intrigue is there. The idea of Vader trying to clone Starkiller is interesting, though doesn't really make much sense yet. I mean, if he wanted him to help overthrow the Emperor, he could have just done that in the first game. And it's not like he really needs him to help take on the rebellion, because in the opening crawl, it's already kind of confirmed that they're already on the run at this point, with Coda even captured as well. Now, we could assume that maybe after Vader saw how powerful Starkiller really was towards the ending of the first game, he reconsidered the idea of using him to overthrow the Emperor. Or maybe the Emperor already knows all about this experiment and is cool with it so long as they get a new dark assassin to exploit. But overall, there just doesn't really seem to be any real purpose for wanting to take the risk of cloning Starkiller in general, especially after all the pain he put them through before. With that said, it's also possible that this version is actually not a clone at all, and Vader is simply lying to him. We all know, thanks to Knights of the Old Republic, that it is possible to erase someone's memory with the Force, and maybe Vader did the same with Starkiller after taking him from the Death Star. But we'll contemplate this as well as other ideas as the story goes on. I do want to point out, there is far more information that can be gathered about what's going on throughout this story from the novelizations of the game. Recently, I did pick up both novels, and just speed reading through them, there is a lot more information about how Coda got captured, what Juno was up to, and Starkiller's actual thoughts as to what's happening during these moments. The good part about both the novels is that in some ways they are the most true versions of the original scripts, and even include storylines that were later completely changed for the games. However, when discussing the story and any theories involving the characters, we'll be sticking mostly with how the story is presented to us here, since this is how most people would have experienced it. With that said, if you would like for me to make a video about the Force Unleashed novels as well, just let me know in the comments below. Now, let's get back to the game. I will say, the cutscenes overall look great. They use a combination of in-engine cutscenes as well as cinematic ones, and for the most part, they are very well done, with a couple of key exceptions. The fun part about them still having a few in-engine cutscenes is that for those scenes, we can actually see whatever outfit or lightsabers that we have equipped. And like in the first game, there are quite a few interesting outfits to choose from, including all sorts of characters from the movies and other games as well.
This is but a taste of the dark side.
I always love when games do stuff like this, just allowing us to have fun with it and not always having to take things too seriously. Also, as you could probably tell, they managed to bring back both Sam Witwer and Matt Sloan to reprise their roles as Starkiller and Vader, And fortunately, all of the original cast have returned for their characters as well, which is always nice to see. Though I still don't get why they changed the appearance of Juno so much. She looks softer, if that makes any sense. Looks more like the innocent girl who survives in a horror movie rather than a experienced Imperial pilot like she is. Just kind of a plain look to her is all. Either way, Vader uses the training droids to act as our former allies and watches to see if we are brainwashed enough to take them out without any hesitation. This section acts as our tutorial, teaching us the basics like how to attack, use force push, and use lightning. Every time we strike Juno, however, we end up having these flashbacks of the first game, implying that either the cloning procedure can't wipe away our feelings, or that Vader's brainwashing of Starkiller still needs a little work. Again, this idea of brainwashing someone with the Force was done in Knights of the Old Republic, and in that game, as we ran into Bastila, the memories start to reform in us. So I'd probably say that adds a point for the he's still the original Starkiller camp.
Wait! Don't.
Juno?
Yes.
Strike her down.
I can't!
You will. You were created to do my bidding. Then it is as I feared.
Why is this happening to me?
The accelerated cloning process is still imperfect. Those who came before you went mad within months. I believed you would be the first success, but it seems you are to suffer the same fate.
What will you do with me?
Okay, you're telling me it was literally that easy for us to escape Vader? I mean, he has seen how dangerous Starkiller is personally. Like, really personally. Did he really not think there was no need to have any extra security around the training room at all? I mean, he had just said multiple clones had eventually gone mad, so it's not like something like this should be even a surprise to him. But hey, at least it does lead to a pretty rad escape sequence. Alright, I'll give it to y'all, this is pretty badass. Well, at least it would be if I didn't hit everything on my way down. But this is a great way to start the game in earnest, with something not before seen in the first one. It's not overly long or complicated, and the dark and stormy planet of Camino looks amazing in the background. It also transitions perfectly into one of the best superhero-esque landings of the series. Man, that's cool.
Subject has breached containment. Lockdown procedures engaged.
So I think here is a good point where we should probably start talking a little bit more about the combat. For the most part, it's pretty much just a better tuned version of the first game. Many features such as the physics engine and AI's response to force powers are still here, and the movement and attacks still play pretty much the same, but now feel way more responsive. While the original game had very little feedback for our attacks, every attack here really feels like it's doing something. A big part why that is because here they were actually allowed to go all out with things like dismemberment, for example. Hands, legs, heads, they all go flying once we start slicing. And that's not the only way the enemies are affected by our attacks. Using higher level force push will actually break apart their armor, and fully upgraded lightning can even set them on fire. This is something that when looking at the trailers for the game, I was pretty surprised by. And a lot of them, as well as the promotional art, they depict things like Force Repulse being so powerful it would literally disintegrate the enemies around you. And this game does live up to that and then some. I mean, sure, in games like Jedi Outcast and Academy, you can use console commands to turn on full dismemberment, and it is pretty brutal. But if we're talking about the default settings, this right here is the most brutal depiction of what a Jedi can do to a regular old stormtrooper, and it is great. Now, one thing you might have already noticed is that many of the combos from the first game have returned here as well, except this time we actually start with them instead of them being locked behind any sort of leveling system. In fact, the entire leveling system itself has been pretty much done away with in favor of a much more streamlined approach. Similar to the first game, we get XP for killing enemies. However, while that one had the XP level us up so that we could then get tokens to upgrade Starkiller with, here the XP is used directly to upgrade our force powers, kind of similar to Chrome's method in the PS2 and Wii versions of the first game. I know some people probably prefer the older upgrade system, and personally I would agree. It does feel like there's a lot less to go for here in a way, but then again, this streamlined approach does work fairly well. And it was kind of fun seeing the XP counter just get higher and higher as I was waiting to fully upgrade something like Force Lightning. You might also remember in the first game, along with combos and force powers, we could also upgrade attributes such as our health bar, damage resistance, force meter, etc. And some of those attributes can be upgraded here also, except this time they are through the return of the hidden holocrons. I say hidden, but to be honest, over 50% of them you can't miss. This time we have 4 different types. Green, which upgrades our health bar, blue, which upgrades our force bar, yellow, which is an XP boost, and red, which gives us new lightsaber crystals. This time, instead of them being separated into color and effect crystals, they have just been combined together. Unfortunately, that means I will obviously be picking effects that I might not want as much as others, just so I can have the color scheme that I really enjoy. It's not really that big of a deal since almost all the effects are pretty good, but I think I still prefer the old style of just having them separated. So going back to the actual level, I have to say, fighting our way through Camino here is a blast. Aesthetically, it is amazing. Then again, let's be real, rainy levels always create some of the best atmospheres in gaming. The rain and storms also match really well with Starkiller's emotional state here. All he really wants at this point is to escape and have a moment to process what's really going on around him, not knowing of course how to deal with who or what he even is.
Leave me alone!
I keep saying this, but again, this is just such a great location to start the game on.
Get out while you still can!
I'm going!
Okay, so we finally get the good old Force mind trick as a power. You know, I always kind of wondered why it was absent in the first game. But to be honest, I really didn't mess around with it too much until around near the end of the game or so, which is unfortunate because it's actually very helpful. And if upgraded, it can affect multiple people at once. Plus, there's just something really satisfying about mind controlling a scout trooper and having him just turn around and pop one of his allies. Oh yeah, the war droids. I gotta be honest, I am not that much of a fan. Concept-wise, it should be really cool. I mean, a giant robot wielding a shield and using a carbonite gun sounds pretty rad, but it really just doesn't work for me here. Outside of only one particular instance in the game, they never really use its ability to freeze things in any interesting way, making it feel just more like a weaker flamethrower if anything. Plus, what's the gameplay purpose of the shield? I mean, instantly when you come across them, the first thing you will do is use the Force to rip it away, and it's not like they put up that much of a fight about it either, making the shield just kind of worthless. Even the way they fight feels pretty dull, though I will admit the frozen projectiles it throws are fun to toss back at them. But overall, the gameplay contribution mostly feels boring at best and annoying at worst. Also, I don't really think they really match the Imperial look that much. I mean, even the Dark Troopers / Purge Troopers have a relatively human looking design to them, which is a big part of what the Imperials typically go for. In fact, lore-wise, the Imperials normally try and move away from any design that looks too droid-like, due to how poorly the post-Clone Wars galaxy looks at combat droids due to all the atrocities committed by the CIS, which this design looks more at home as. Aesthetic continuity is very important for any faction to have, and personally, I feel this moves just outside that Imperial look. It's unfortunately not the worst example in this game, but it is something that I think could have been improved on greatly, and we'll go over how a little bit later. For now, this is where we see the return of the cinematic kills. Still using some form of quicktime event, we can end most of these mini-bosses with some pretty cool finishers. Oh, wait, no, not finishers, just finisher. You see, every mini-boss only has one finisher that can be done. And while that was the case for many of the mini-bosses in the first game, in that one there was a greater variety to them, and they were also less common to come across. While here you'll be facing one moment and then pretty much round the corner to face another, or just face multiple of them at the same time. Because of this, seeing the same finisher over and over again, back to back, makes something that should be really cool into something that feels kind of monotonous. Again, the actual finishers aren't bad at all, and I do like this one here, but it really would have been beneficial to have 2 or 3 different ones for each mini-boss, since we'll be seeing these same mini-bosses all throughout the entirety of the game. And I mean that. There are no enemies here that are level specific. Each time a new one is introduced, it's simply added to the rotation of enemies we'll be facing later in the game. The problem with this is that it makes it so none of the levels are ever able to really stand out on their own. In the first game, Felucia is special because it's the only place we can face Rancors. Raxus is special because it's the only place we can fight Force Droids and Rhodians, and Cloud City is special because it's the only place we can ever fight Ugnaughts. Or if you're playing Chrome's version of the game, just a whole host of other enemies as well. But what I'm trying to say is that each level has a unique atmosphere and gameplay thanks to the roster of enemies they possess, which is why in Star Wars games especially, I would really like to see the occasional unique enemy appear instead of just hordes of everything I've faced up until that point.
All hands, this is an emergency.
So as we slice our way through Camino, it's pretty obvious that we're already expected to understand how the game plays and works. While the first game kind of eased us into things, here we are thrown just straight into the oven. It really feels like we're just continuing right along from the first game, with these chaotic moments and loads of enemies thrown at us. I mean, they even toss in some jet troopers and some more war machines for good measure. I think the reason we are tossed into the thick of it like this is mostly due to the time crunch they were under. I haven't mentioned this yet, but the game is very short compared to the first. I'm talking like half the time at least, which is obviously one of the biggest complaints you'll find for the game. But it's because of that they couldn't really dilly-dally and ease you into things. I will say, I actually don't mind when sequels just kind of assume that you already understand most things and toss you into it. What I do mind, however, is some of the sillier additions to the game like this one. Oh man, these running sections are just so dull. I mean, they look nice, sure, but they're just so boring. If it was done just once, I could kind of forgive it, but it's done multiple times in the game and I don't see why. It's literally just running in one direction and nothing else. There's no gameplay here at all, and instead it just kind of feels like filler to get us to a new location. Fortunately, right after, we do find Vader's TIE Advance, and after throwing a few TIE fighters at a tower, we create a bridge over to it and discover our new ability, Force Fury. It pretty much just beefs up all of our abilities. We can crush AT-STs on a whim, spam some insane force lightning, or just go wild decapitating stormtroopers. I mean, by the force, just look at all those severed heads. It's another ability I probably should have used more of, but always kept ready just in case I absolutely needed it. Which, on normal difficulty, is pretty much never, and even on the levels I replayed through on hard mode, it still really wasn't ever needed to get through. Because of that, my advice would be just have fun with it. It recharges pretty quickly as you kill enemies, so there's no reason to ever have to save it up or anything. Okay, so why didn't Vader just stop him from leaving? I mean, Starkiller pulled an entire Star Destroyer out of the sky, so I'm pretty sure Vader could have pulled him back down no problem if he really wanted to. Oh well. At least we're on to Cato Nemoidia, which, like Camino, looks amazing. I really love interesting futuristic designs, and this whole idea of a hanging art city posted on rocks over a planet whose surface is acid oceans is just such a unique idea.
You're running out of executioners, Baron.
Try the Corellian slice hounds.
my lord.
Assemble a squad in the hangar. I'll meet him there.
It's nice to see Coda again, and it appears he's still in pretty good form. But I have to ask, who decided to send in Salacious Crumb to try and execute a Jedi? I mean, unless he's related to the one and only Picaroon Seed Boodle, that's just animal abuse. Speaking of animals, it seems like the arenas can never really be complete without those creatures from Episode 2. Now, the Baron here is played by the great D. Bradley Baker, who of course does an obscene amount of voices in the Clone Wars and Bad Batch shows. Though I will still always know him mostly as the Gravemind and of course General Rom. And like with everything he does, he of course gives a great performance here.
I was expecting Lord Vader.
The Jedi. Where is he?
Oh, he's alive. For the moment. He's been in the arena for 7 days. What are the Imperial security codes for this sector? The security codes. Kill him.
Okay, they're on a platform in the sky. Why not just use Force Push and knock them all off the edge at once? Either way, we're on to Chapter 2, and pretty much right away we are introduced to a couple new enemies. First up is the AT-MT, or All-Terrain Missile Platform. To be honest, they're kinda just annoying and not really that hard, considering if we just block right before the missiles hit us, it bounces them right back at them. So they are pretty easy, but unfortunately sort of slow the game down at times. Their cinematic kill is also rather dull, with us just simply pushing a bunch of missiles right back at them. Not exactly the most original idea, and kinda boring compared to what we've seen before. The next new enemy that is introduced literally right after this is the new Sith Acolytes. These dudes use exclusively Force powers and are invulnerable to them as well, meaning all we really have to do is close a distance and they are done for. Lore-wise, these particular Acolytes have next to none, other than what we can plainly see. Though there are some theories as to who, or more importantly, what they are. However, that involves some major story spoilers, so we'll open that can of worms later in the video. All we really need to know for now is that we need to grab them and throw them off some ledges. So I really like Cato Neimoidia's design here quite a bit. It's somewhat reminiscent of Cloud City and how it plays, but the color palette and architecture of the place is so unique, and it feels both elitist and alien at the same time, which makes sense since this used to be a major economic world for the CIS, being obviously controlled by the Neimoidians. And it's cool to see their design and even artwork all around the place.
You gotta be kidding me.
Neimoidian women. You know what? Hear me out. You know, I don't think at this point we had ever really seen how the Empire dealt with the more important CIS worlds after the war, so it's pretty cool seeing this, as well as hearing some of the propaganda the Empire has playing.
The people of Cato Neimoidia suffer great deprivation and long to be rid of their oppressive overlords. They long for change.
We are not natural leaders like those in the Empire, not smart enough to run our own planet. And even though we can fight, everyone knows that we are not fit to be Imperial troops. What service options are there for young Neimoidians in the new Imperial Cato Neimoidia?
How the Empire dealt with many of the alien worlds under their control ranged greatly depending on the world, and I love getting a chance to see some of that here. By the way, in the novel, they also include a whole section dedicated to our favorite Squidman himself, Admiral Akbar, fighting against the Empire's control over one of his species' planets. Unfortunately, none of that is in the game at all. In fact, probably less than half the novel is even included in here, which is kinda sad.
I've seen you fight. Now let's see you run.
Oh god, another running section. Again, you do pretty much nothing here and it's just really boring. But at least this does move us on to the casino, which is actually a pretty fun section. Its combat encounters feel pretty good, and aesthetically, it's a really fun place to run through and look around. Man, who knew Jabba's influence spread even this far out? Probably the best part about this section is that it has one of the best war droid encounters of the game. So in my opinion, this is where and how the war droid should have been introduced. The idea of this thing walking around, cryo-freezing every living creature inside the casino while looking for us is pretty awesome. And the fact that the second one comes in, freezing our exit so we can't easily escape, is a good use of the enemy's gimmick to create a natural obstacle that keeps us in this section instead of just running right past it. This could have also been a great opportunity to craft some pretty cool lore for these guys. Since this is one of the more prominent CIS planets, what if these war droids were experimental droids for the Clone Wars that the Baron found and repurposed after the Empire took control of the planet? This small change in the story of a secret CIS factory being located on Cato Nemoidia would not only help explain away the war droids, but would also explain many of the other enemies we eventually fight later in the game, and would even allow for a greater explanation for all these strange Sith acolytes we have running around here. However, to talk about that would be to spoil many things to come, so we'll address that idea much later. For now, let's keep things moving.
Greetings. I'm happy to welcome you to Cato.
Hey, would you look at that? Another pointless running section. Yay. So this whole train section here is pretty much the video game equivalent of this should have been an email. And what I mean by that is that this should have probably just been a cutscene. And that's coming from me, a diehard Half-Life fan who loves when games allow you to maintain control. The issue is, this whole segment could be cool, but it's so half-assed it just kind of feels like filler in an already somewhat bloated level. It might not seem like it for this video, but playing through up to this point is a lot of repetitive encounters with these same enemies over and over again. I mean, bloated might not be the proper term since it is a rather short game, but it just felt like it was going on forever with nothing really happening. Because of that, by this point I was pretty much already kinda checked out for the day. And then this came up and I was thinking, wow, we get to actually have some cool high-speed combat. Oh boy, this is gonna be fun. Only to have Starkiller just stand there in place, spamming Force Lightning at TIE fighters, pretty much doing nothing at all. I mean, come on. Flight of the fucking Falcon had more engaging gameplay than this. They do try and spice it up a little bit with a fight against that gunship that's been harassing us up to this point, but even that's dull with us just standing in place, deflecting rockets right back at them with ease. Again, this could make for a fun segment if maybe they had done something like pulled a Jedi Academy and had made it larger with us having to fight our way to the front of the tram while having to avoid the gunship firing at us. Just something other than standing in place hitting the same button over and over again. So we are back to more of the same, with us just fighting off waves and waves of troops as they get dropped off by more and more transports. You might be thinking at this point that we should just say screw it and start running right past them, but they thought of that, and have installed these ray shields to make sure that we have to grind it out with each and every wave of enemies. Don't get me wrong, I get it. In the first game, it was designed in such a way that you could literally just sprint past 80% of it, so I understand their desire to keep that from happening in this one. However, while some segments keep us in the arena in interesting ways like the casino war droid we just talked about, others are more like this one where it just feels tedious. Walking 10 feet to each encounter with them all feeling pretty much the same just makes it feel like they're trying to pad out the runtime instead of creating an interesting engagement. Which they kinda have to, since again, even with them doing things like this, the runtime here is insanely short. In fact, I'm actually looking at my playthrough time right now, and no joke, it is about the same length as my playthrough for the DS version of the first game. Just crazy. At least after all that, we do eventually make our way over to the bridge that leads to the arena that Coda is in. It's not great or anything, but after that long slog before, it's definitely an improvement. But again, because they want us to play the game their way, they have to use these random shields on these barricades that mysteriously just go away once we kill each wave of enemies. You know, instead of just allowing them to be destructible from the start and actually trusting the players to have fun with the environments as they see fit. I'm sorry if it seems like I'm kind of in the weeds with some of these issues right now, but what really made the first game so great was the perceived freedom of how we could interact with the world around us. But this really feels like the developers just did not care about that at all, and just decided to lock down the world in inorganic ways in order to make sure that the players didn't do anything too unexpected. But it's the unexpected things that can make a game feel so exciting. The idea that you're doing something that maybe only a few people have thought of, or just doing things in a way that are just comedic to you. And unfortunately, this game does all it can to make sure that you walk down the straight and narrow path at all times. Well, that's a little bit of lag. So here we are facing down that gunship from last time. It is kind of strange that this would even be a challenge to Starkiller, considering that we've already been decimating ties no problem. But then again, I guess that's always the issue when a character's power level is so high. Unfortunately, this fight is almost as dull as the first one, with us just bouncing missiles back at them until eventually we get to throw the gunship into the supports for the bridge. I feel like they must have been really impressed by the missile deflection in this game because they use it a lot. But after taking down the gunship, we go inside the arena itself to find our old master Coda.
Send out the Gorog.
But, my lord, the arena's restraints, they haven't been properly tested.
Open the Gorog gate. Now!
You can sit this one out, General.
By the Force, I knew you were alive.
Well, we'll see how long I stay that way.
Well, that's one hell of a beastie. Before I go into too much detail on that, however, I do want to mention how nice it is to hear that classic theme from the first game here. The composer for this one is actually the same as the first game, Mark Gritsky, the man who is also responsible for the fantastic Knights of the Old Republic 2 soundtrack. Here he has made updated versions of mostly classic tracks to better match the atmosphere of the game, and I would say most of the original music here in general is even better than the first. Just a great job by a great composer. Again, like in the first game, many of the scenes do make use of the John Williams tracks or use samples of them, but unfortunately, due to copyright rules, I obviously have to find ways to replace those. I hate doing it, but it is what it is. Now, back to the cutscene. I really enjoy Starkiller's interaction with Coda here. It's like they were never apart, which if Starkiller is a clone would be kinda strange since his memories in every other scene seems kinda shattered. But once he sees Coda, he instantly seems like his old self again. which I'd say adds another point into the he's still the original Starkiller column. Hell, 2 points if you consider the fact that Coda is blind and can only see through the Force, yet instantly recognizes Starkiller without even a moment's hesitation. I feel like if he was a clone, something about his Force presence would at least seem just a little bit off to Coda.
Tell me you still use the same comm channel.
I hear you.
Good timing. I don't know how much more I could take.
No time, General. What the hell is this thing?
I have no idea, but it's big.
That's perceptive for a blind man. Now, how do I kill it?
I'm not sure you can.
Alright, so this is the Gorog, an insanely large creature with almost no lore behind it at all. I mean, really, even in the databank section of the game, it simply has an old religious text that says the creator of all the worlds, after making so much, wondered if he could create something stronger than even himself. And so he created the Gorog. And after the Gorog opened his eyes, his first act was crushing the creator's spine, killing him there on the spot. And soon after, scoured the world searching for food. By the way, this databank section is pretty fun, describing enemies and locations with funny little tidbits added in here and there. Like this report from a Commander Cody lamenting the quality of the new stormtroopers, saying that they're just expendable buffoons and how he has even seen one of them hit his head on a blast door. I mean, just ridiculous. Now back to the Gorog, I have to admit I'm mixed when it comes to him in multiple ways. Lore-wise, it can fit in with the Star Wars universe pretty well. I mean, there are plenty of monsters out there, some relatively normal and some Lovecraftian, so saying this crosses the line into absurdity really isn't that much of an issue for me personally. However, its overall design and appearance does feel a little cartoony, especially with its Popeye-style forearms. And this isn't helped by the perspective we play the engagement in. I mean, throughout this whole portion, I just kept getting flashbacks of fighting the Luchador boss from Rayman Legends. And yes, I know Legends came out after this. I'm just pointing out that this perspective for the fight makes them feel just again a little cartoony. But all that's fine, so long as the gameplay here is fun and interesting. So here's the issue. This fight is a little finicky to say the least. Multiple times you will seem to have dodged an attack and yet the hit will still land like this moment here. As you can see, we have cleared his attack and yet it still counts as a hit. Now, sure, our jumps and dodges could be much cleaner. I mean, these kind of games aren't exactly my wheelhouse, so I'm aware I'm not the best at them. But with that said, there are other issues with this fight as well. Pretty soon after we start, Coda will tell us to charge up the Gorog's manacles to hold him in place. However, when we go and use our lightning, a lot of the times it just phases right through his hands and attacks his face instead, which is really annoying. Luckily, we can avoid this by doing the lightning lightsaber attacks to directly charge his manacles. And after those manacles are charged, we can then button mash his hands back into those restraints. We will have to do this for both hands before we can then do this awkward looking QuickTime event where we just slam his head into the ground a couple times. And then, guess what? We get to do that all over again. Isn't that just nice? Now, I will partially defend one aspect of this fight that I have seen many others complain about, and that is his roar attack. After completing the game, I was looking up more information about it and saw quite a few people saying that this attack is just unfair since it just can't be dodged. And that's true, you can't actually dodge it at all. And an impossible to dodge attack would normally be something I would definitely complain a lot about. Fortunately, one thing I haven't mentioned yet is that the Force Unleashed 2 uses a partially regenerating health system, where so long as we can avoid damage right after being hit, the original damage taken will simply go away. So even if his roar attack is impossible to dodge, so long as we can dodge his following attacks, it actually causes us no damage at all. Unfortunately, as I mentioned before, even if his basic attacks don't actually hit us, they can still sometimes count. Not to mention, even if our health does recharge, just the act of being knocked down by an attack that you can't avoid is still just annoying. And if your health is already low, well, that's it for you. Okay, why are we aiming for the metal plate in his head rather than just going for like his eyes or something? We are now on to Phase 2, which actually kinda confused me at first. In the beginning, Coda tells us to cut the support cables, and I assume that the smaller cables here are what he meant, since they get destroyed if the Gorog hits them. So for my first couple attempts, I tried having him attack me to destroy the platform, thinking it would just repeat around the arena until they were all gone. But instead, we're actually stuck here until we can first damage him enough with Force Lightning before moving higher up to get him to rip down the larger cables. Unfortunately, we didn't yet have our lightning fully leveled up at this point, since because I was going into this game somewhat blind, I opted to upgrade our lightsaber strength first, thinking that the boss fights would be lightsaber duels similar to the first game. However, for this one, they chose to go with these more scripted boss fights with much larger enemies, instead of the more free-flowing dynamic duels of the first. I understand why they chose this route when you consider the fact that besides Vader, who would we really be dueling? But I have to admit, I do miss them more than I thought I would. I should also point out that the more scripted nature of the boss fights result in them not really scaling as well with the difficulty. Again, I went through a few of these levels on hard mode afterwards, and because it's all about just dodging the attacks, once you understand them, the boss fights don't really become any more challenging, at least not to the same level as the rest of the game. Okay, I kinda feel like they might have forgot to record some of the Baron's lines here, since he kinda just growls at us like a zombie for some reason. And come on, Coda, you're really gonna make us go through a whole nother falling section just to get you? I mean, I love the first one, but this one is just bad. It's like they had in their mind the battle of Gandalf versus the Balrog, but had no idea how to do it because wow. Not only is the gameplay of falling and spamming the same attack over and over again just not fun, but it's not even designed properly. The Gorog's attacks will hit you even if you are clearly out of the way. Now, I did find out on my hard playthrough of the fight, you can actually hide in the corner and avoid almost everything, but that's an exploit, not actual gameplay. It just really feels like they ran out of ideas for the third stage of the fight, and last minute tossed this in just to move things along. Even the cinematic kill feels like they were wondering how they could make it epic while also not having to do all that much. Again, I know all this comes from the fact they only had 9 months to make the game, but it doesn't change the fact that from a player's perspective, it feels like an incomplete and lousy way to end an already boss fight. Which is a shame, because I feel like the Gorog could have been a lot of fun if they just had more time to work on it. It's a cool concept that unfortunately just doesn't land for me.
You don't have a way out of this, do you?
Oh, I wasn't thinking that far ahead!
Let's hope she can reach us in time!
Juno! Where is she?
I don't know.
What?
Well, the rebel fleet is scattered across the Outer Rim. I lost contact with their ship after I was captured. Your alliance is on the run, and I lost an entire squad here. But now that you're back, we can take the fight to the Empire. A major strike is what we really need in order to rally the troops.
I'm not him.
I may be blind, but I'm still connected to the Force.
I'm not Starkiller. I'm a clone. I was grown in a vat to take his place.
Whoa, is that what Vader told you?
Yes.
I don't believe it. No one can clone Jedi. It's never been done. And I can sense how powerful you are. We can put that power to use.
You have no idea who I am or what I went through on Camino.
Camino? If you could provide the Alliance with information on the cloning facilities there, we could launch a full-scale...
No! I just want... Look, I need a place to think this through. To meditate.
To hide?
Until I find her.
We're at war and you want a quiet place to think? The Alliance will be destroyed while you're wandering the forests of Kashyyyk or exploring the caves of Dagobah. You'll let the galaxy die to go find yourself?
What are you talking about?
Oh. I don't know. Nothing. Go wherever you want. You can take the ship, it's always been yours anyway. Just drop me at the nearest spaceport before you get lost in the stars, boy.
Dagobah.
So I hope you're strapped in, because between that last boss fight and the next time we get to fight with any enemies at all, we have around 15 minutes of just exposition and filler. You know, it's like they saw Half-Life's success of nearly exclusively doing show-don't-tell stories and thought, why not try and see if the inverse is true? Because wow, do they rely heavily on it. And the worst part is, as we go through the rest of the story, you'll probably start to notice they struggle even at that. This scene right here isn't the biggest offender, but it does still feel kind of off to me. Both Coda's voice actor Chloe Fredrickson and Starkiller Sam Witwer give great performances, but the way this and many other scenes are written makes them feel more like rough drafts, which, again, given the time restraints they were under, they probably were. Here we just kind of sprint right past the idea that Starkiller might be a clone, with Coda just dismissing it like it's not even worth considering, and everything moves so fast we aren't given any moment to process that much. Now, the main reason I say this feels like the first couple drafts of this scene is because story-wise, there's not much wrong here. The idea that Coda is so sure that we are the actual Starkiller works as a good contrast to Vader's words on Kamino, and the somewhat frantic nature of the conversation leads well into Starkiller's desire to slow down and to figure out who he actually is. Concept-wise, it's a fine scene, but the pacing of the conversation feels artificial, making it seem sort of rushed and unnatural. Also, the random name drop of Dagobah is a silly excuse to get us there, especially when there's no real reason that Coda should even know the exact location of Yoda's exile. But before we go and take a look at that whole mess, why don't we go ahead and pop on over to see what Vader's been up to.
He has a healthy head start.
Find the woman and bring her to me. He will follow.
I'll need a squadron of stormtroopers. They won't be coming back.
The Empire will provide whatever you require.
They'll do.
Alright, so now we got good old Boba Fett entering the mix. His voice actor here does a great job, as he should since Boba Fett is also played by D. Bradley Baker. Now again, I came into this game pretty much blind, so seeing Boba Fett here actually got me really excited since a proper encounter with Boba Fett and whatever these new enemies are seemed like an awesome idea. And from what I saw of the marketing, it looked like it would be a pretty epic fight, which is kind of funny and a little depressing looking back on this scene knowing what I know now, but we'll discuss all of that later. For now, why don't we go ahead and check out the iconic level of Dagobah. So Dagobah is such a fascinating level, allowing us to live out our dream of doing crazy things with the Force, like jumping on our ship to collect holocrons, moving some rocks to collect holocrons, or even looking behind bushes to collect holocrons. I mean, the gameplay loop here is absolutely amazing and really encapsulates what this series is all about.
What is the core gameplay?
Finding more holocrons. Okay, in all seriousness, this level is insultingly bad. It's literally just put here so they can have Yoda in the marketing to help sell the game. Nothing happens here, and I mean it. It's literally us just looking in the most basic of locations to find holocrons and then walking up to Yoda to start another long cutscene that frankly is not needed. In fact, I'll go ahead and timestamp where you can skip to the end of the scene if you aren't interested in it, because damn is it long. But I do at least feel it is important to show in order for us to better talk about it, so here we go.
You guard this place?
No, only a watcher am I now.
Then you'll let me pass.
Brought you here, the galaxy has. Your path, clearly, this is.
You know what I'm looking for.
Something lost. A part of yourself, perhaps. That which you seek, inside, you will find.
This is Captain Eclipse. I'm ordering defensive protocols. Prime your shields and check. Send a security detail.
What you have seen, follow it. You must.
To the ends of the galaxy if I have to.
Okay, so first, let's start off with what I do like here. For example, Yoda's laugh. Alright, fine. There is a couple positives here I might as well mention. For one, Yoda is played by the one and only Tom Kane, the voice for Yoda in a lot of other Star Wars media including the Clone Wars show, as well as played many other Star Wars characters out there. I talked a bit about his many roles in my retrospective on the first game where he played Captain Stern, as well as our father, Kento Merrick, and also Lobot in the PS2 and Wii versions of the game. Now, in that video, I did make one mistake that I would like to mention here. When discussing his works, I said something along the lines of how he has worked on Star Wars projects as far back as the 90s all the way until today. What I unfortunately did not know was that Tom Kane actually retired from voice acting back in 2020 due to suffering a pretty terrible stroke that badly damaged the speech center of his brain. Tom Kane is such a legendary voice actor, and it's so sad to hear that he and his family have had to go through something like this. So again, I just really wanted to clear that up. Now, let's get back to the game itself. Though the idea of Starkiller coming to Dagobah is pretty ridiculous, and only done to sell intrigue through the marketing of the game, it does have an important moment here in the cave. And what I really like about it is that your interpretation of its meaning could be totally different based on if you think he's a clone or if you think he's the original Starkiller. If you think he's a clone, this could be one of two things. The first being the obvious, the cries of all the clones that have had their minds shattered by Vader's experiments, or even the still existing clones reaching out through the Force begging for help. It's simple, but it works well. However, a different idea could be them representing all the memories of the original Starkiller filling our mind, pulling and begging us to go in all sorts of directions. They are the manifestations of what drove all the other clones before us mad, and it isn't until our clone here clears his mind and decides to let go does he finally find the foundation needed to hold himself together, accepting whatever it is he might actually be. For a clone storyline, both of these interpretations, as well as others out there, could totally work. However, what if you believe this is still the original Starkiller? Well, if that's the case, then the vision could represent all the failed clones of Starkiller Vader keeps trying to make. I assume with them being clones, they would have some kind of connection to us through the Force. So this still could be them reaching out, with their cries for help being quite literal. Though this would paint a slightly darker view of Starkiller's actions here, ignoring the cries of the clones to selfishly focus on Juno, which is something that we will see more of as the game progresses. But it could also just mean that the path to helping them is through Juno, which would also make sense. I would like to also mention that Yoda says something pretty interesting here that again makes me feel like we are in fact the original Starkiller.
Something lost. A part of yourself, perhaps.
Something lost. If we were a clone, we wouldn't be finding something lost. We would be discovering something new. We would be discovering our purpose in spite of merely being a copy of the original. However, if we are the original, then this makes sense. We would be finding that spark that we lost when our mind was wiped by Vader. Of course, I could just be looking too deeply into dialogue that took someone 2 seconds to write because of the time crunch. I mean, it's clear that this whole section was intended to be more at some point, considering they went through all the trouble of doing the initial designs for us to run around in. If I had to guess, it probably would have played out similar to the ending portion of the Jedi Temple DLC of the first game, with them adding some kind of fight that would represent the internal struggle Starkiller is facing. Unfortunately, as it is, this level is only here so they can have Yoda in the marketing for the game, and is an even bigger waste of time than even the Rogue Squadron 3 version of the place.
Jump again when you're in the air. And double jump you will. Do it now. Good.
Rogue Shadow, please transmit landing codes.
This is General Ram Kota requesting permission to board the Salvation. Authorization Talus Haroon 10-11-38.
Code checks out. Good to have you back, General. You're cleared for docking.
There's no sign of attack.
Stay on guard. A powerful glimpse of the future like you experienced is rarely wrong. And if it comes to pass, you'll be glad you picked me up on Malastare. The Alliance leadership can't agree on our next move. We don't have the firepower to take out a meaningful Imperial target, but nobody wants to risk lives making small hit-and-run attacks either. Juno keeps pushing them to do something, anything, even if it's only a symbolic victory.
Have you told her that I'm with you?
No. Better that she sees you first, knows that you're really back.
You still don't believe that I'm a clone?
I don't know. But I'm beginning to think it doesn't matter. An encrypted code cylinder?
Nav coordinates and schematics for the secret cloning facilities on Camino. It's everything the Alliance needs to launch a successful assault.
We can't pull off an attack like this without your help.
We have to reach the bridge!
All hands! We've lost power to several areas of the ship!
I knew this was gonna happen. We should have warned her.
You know, that's a very good point. I understand why Coda wanted to keep Starkiller's return a secret from Juno so she can see him for herself. I mean, that part makes sense. But you're really telling me he couldn't shoot her a message real quick after arriving saying, "Hey, I got some secret Imperial intel that they are planning to possibly ambush us over here, so keep those scanners going and have the crew prepare to fight." Just, come on, why wouldn't you warn her? With that said, I do like this cutscene as a whole, and it almost feels like the story is about to get back on track. It's really nice to hear Coda's thoughts on the rebellion, and it's clear that he's just chomping at the bit to take the Empire head on. And I just really wish we had more moments like this. You could have a couple scenes of Coda and Juno maybe having different ideas as to how they should approach fighting the Empire compared to the rebel leadership. There could even be some good back and forth where Coda thinks our return means that we can go and take on some massive targets, while Juno realizes the inner turmoil we are in, so instead recommends caution, creating friction amongst the main cast with Coda upset that Juno has seemingly gone soft, so to speak. It would have allowed all the characters to shine and have their own moments. But instead, we got this. Okay, I'm just gonna say it here. This is the worst made level in the game. No, wait, sorry. It is the worst made level in the entire series. The pacing of this level gets fumbled so hard, I could barely believe it. And the worst part is, this level could be really good, but they screwed up the design of it so badly, I almost just want to log off entirely just out of sheer disappointment. I mean, I'm really sorry y'all, because typically, I enjoy talking about what I love about different games. But I'm warning you now, this level, I will have very little good to say about it. In fact, it bummed me out so bad, we are going to do something that we have never done on this channel before, and that is take a moment at the end of the level to go over a few easy changes that could have improved it greatly while still retaining the same story beats going forward. But for now, let's go ahead and take a look at this disaster of a level as it currently is. We start the level off by running just a little ways while hearing Juno direct troops to figure out what's going on, and then see a small group of soldiers fall to their death thanks to a sabotaged elevator. Not even a minute later, we make it to the bridge, and what do you know? Juno has mysteriously been captured.
I'm on it! Proxy?
Master?
I thought you were dead.
Oh, it's a very long story. Captain Eclipse and Senator Organa, they found
Juno.
me.
Where's Juno?
I don't know. The Imperials must have taken her towards Deck 7.
The docking bay.
Order the attack, General!
Master! Be careful.
Now I just really need to get this point across. There is absolutely no build up here at all. One moment she's talking on the intercoms no problem, and less than a minute later the bridge is destroyed and she's been captured. Hell, we literally see when the attack happens, and in the seconds it takes us to open up the door, they are gone. Also, as much as I enjoyed Proxy in the first game, did we really need him here? I mean, there is of course a lot you could do with his character, and strange enough, the novel does have a couple of really good chapters involving him. But for the game, this is the only scene where we ever talk, so because of that, it just comes across as feeling kinda forced. Oh, and why is Starkiller telling Coda to go ahead and launch the attack on Camino? There are enemy forces currently on our flagship. What idiot would rush into battle before clearing them out? Oh, that's right, the same idiot who tells a Jedi Master not to help him chase down Juno. After you know she's off the ship, then maybe being desperate enough to find her he could order the attack, but still, it's just a silly way to raise the stakes further because now we have to clear the ship. And listen, I get they wanted to find a way to separate Coda from Starkiller for the rest of the level, but come on, just use the classic someone falls down an elevator shaft or something, which they could have totally done, since right after this, we do just that. So it's pretty clear they wanted to have a level with a slight horror feeling to it, similar to the Ghost Ship level from Republic Commando. In that game, after hearing and seeing allies get brutally killed, our first encounter was with a scavenger droid who would try to jump on us and drill its way through our visor. And here, it's pretty much exactly the same. Okay, come on. You're telling me you couldn't come up with a better animation than that? Just, toss. I mean, there are so many other options you could have gone with, and that's the one you settle on? That's the one that we will have to watch 100 times over in this game? Even Republic Commando had a cooler method than this one, and all we had there was a wrist knife. Okay, that's still pretty badass, but still, Starkiller has 2 lightsabers and force powers. Let him slice it off or something, just, ugh. Eventually though, these little clankers swarm all around us, and we start to get flashbacks of us using force repulse, which is very effective against them.
General, I've seen these terror droids before. Vader's developing them on Kamino. Warn your men!
So Vader is working on war droids on Kamino as well. Tell me, Starkiller, what the fuck isn't Vader working on over there? I mean, where is he finding the time to do all of this? And again, why? Is it to overthrow the Emperor? Is it to crush the rebels? I mean, none of this is ever explained. And Vader's starting to feel a lot more like a cartoony mad scientist over there, just sending out his creations to go and stop the hero. Again, there is a lot of potential here, and after we finish the level, we'll go into a few ways how it could have been changed for the better. But for now, let's get back into it. After clearing out more of these guys, we end up finding Juno just lying on the ground for some reason. I mean, again, just why? I know some people might say it's to force Starkiller down an alternate route so we get ambushed by these new enemies, but why didn't they just lay their ambush in the hallway we just walked through? Again, there is no reason for this. Okay, finally, I have something good to say, and that is, I do like the Terror Troopers as an enemy. Surprisingly, I actually sort of knew a little bit about them before playing this, thanks to the awesome Galactic Empire mod for XCOM 2, which, if you never played it, turns XCOM into one of the greatest Star Wars games ever made. I mean, I'm serious, it is so insanely fun. But let's stay on track here. The Terror Troopers' ability to disappear and reappear works pretty well for a unique combat encounter, and fits in with what they are meant to do lore-wise. Plus, their General Grievous-looking masks look really cool. For the most part, all we have to do is stun them with lightning and then use our grapple attack, which, my god, is this move overpowered at times. We then make our way over to where Juno was at, except she is suddenly awake and being walked away by Boba Fett. Again, I don't know why we had to find her sleeping before this. Why not just make this the first time we see her? It literally changes nothing. Also, what's the deal with this cutscene? Why is Starkiller just standing there saying and doing nothing? There is no tension here at all. Why not have this scene back at the ray shield part? That way Starkiller can bang against it in anger, shouting Juno's name in desperation, or just something instead of this stale as hell scene. Luckily, after that bewildering choice, they did add something that did bring me back in a bit.
There's something there. Something big.
And that's where I'm going.
So the idea of a giant droid slicing its way through the ship like this isn't a bad one, and at this point I was kinda hopeful about the prospects of fighting it. However, first we have to make our way through some platforming. It's not terrible, but it's not really good either. Plus, they make us do these dumb door battery things that I haven't mentioned yet, but they are all over this level. I think we had already done like 5 of them by this point. It slows the game down to a crawl and does nothing but serve as a way to force us not to run past encounters, to which I'd say make the encounters more fun and I wouldn't want to skip them. But anyways, after we do that, we then go and do some more platforming in what seems to be a generator room. And is it just me, or does this object that we have to stop here for some reason look like a 2D model made to look 3D? I'm not saying that it is, I'm just saying it looks kind of funny to me for some reason, and I don't know why. But as we press on, we end up finding the last of the new enemies for this level, the Terror Biodroid. Unfortunately, though they do look menacing, combat-wise, they feel kind of bland. I don't know how to explain it other than my brain just sort of turns off when fighting them. And again, this is such a radical departure from the Imperial aesthetics. I mean, they seem like they would feel more at home with the Necrons than anything else.
No! Coda, they're gone. Send the order to attack or I will go without you!
Already done. I've told the Alliance we have just this one chance to strike. The fleet will converge on Camino. But you know, Vader is luring you back to him.
Yes, I know, but he won't be expecting the entire Rebel fleet.
My thoughts as well. Let's hope we're right. Prepare for light speed.
Okay, why wouldn't he expect the Rebel fleet? I mean, Vader knows the fleet exists. He knows Starkiller and Coda escaped Cato Nemoidia together. I'm pretty sure Boba Fett can message him saying he got Juno and Starkiller is chasing after him. I mean, if the possibility that Starkiller wouldn't convince Coda to have the rebellion make an attack on Camino just so he could save Juno didn't cross his mind, then Vader would be an idiot. He has all the info needed to assume some kind of attack is coming. Maybe you could argue he wouldn't expect the entire Rebel fleet to show up. However, I still think that's pretty unlikely. But then again, let's be real. The writing for this level in general has been trash. And before we move on to the boss fight, we need to first take a quick moment to look at how easy it would have been to improve this. So as it stands, this whole level is pretty much backwards. We lose most of our ability to build up any tension involving our reunion with Juno thanks to her being captured a minute into the level. But what if instead our tram got shut off still at the other end of the ship? With our comms scrambled, we start to make our way through to the bridge. With systems shorting out, elevators falling apart, the sounds of rebels being slaughtered, just a few things to help build up that slight horror element that they were clearly going for. Eventually, we see some rebels torn apart by these smaller terror droids, and instead of Starkiller knowing all about them already, why not have Coda know about them? This would create a minor change in the story, but Coda could say that these were secret droids being built for the CIS on Cato Nemoidia, similar to our idea with the war droids. This would also explain why the Terror Troopers and Terror Droids use a similar faceplate to General Grievous, and it would allow for some interesting lore opportunities about Grievous assembling a secret Terror Droid battalion that never came to fruition. And just like how Vader took control of the Nogri to form his own Death Battalions, he could have been secretly working with the Baron to form his own Terror ones. This would also give a good reason for the Sith Acolytes being on Cato Nemoidia in the first place, since of course Vader would want to have some of his own people there to help ensure the security of his secret alliance with the Baron. This one plot change would explain away the aesthetic changes of the game's enemies, while also giving Coda more of a reason for being on Cato Nemoidia as well, since as it stands, Cato Nemoidia serves no overall function to the story except for being the place to pick up Coda. And in a game with so few locations, you should really do everything you can to try and justify the locations that you chose. Now back to criticizing this level here, instead of Coda just running off on his own, we could still get separated from Coda by having that giant droid burning its way through the ship collapsing a hallway or something. This not only would put us alone, but also add build up to the eventual boss fight. Now as we continue to make our way to the bridge by ourselves, they could then add in us hearing Juno giving commands to the crew through the ship's intercom. Being unable to respond back to her would obviously mess with Starkiller, allowing him to make a few good comments, adding to his unease and frustration at being so close to the one person who might finally be able to put his broken mind at ease. Maybe even include a moment where she is ordering any personnel that are able to head to the engine room to fix the disabled engines, and as we use lightning to shock them back online, she would be thankful without even knowing it was actually us. Again, the whole point of this is simply to tease our emotions a bit to make her being captured right before our reunion actually feel like something. Also, just to give her something to do, since this game gives her nothing from start to finish. Of course, as we start to get closer to the moment of her capture, we could hear her calling out for reinforcements, saying that the main bridge guard has been killed and they're cutting through the blast doors, before we hear an explosion and blaster fire as she calls out for help, with the intercom simply cutting to static. After a little bit longer, we could make our way to the bridge where the scene pretty much plays out like normal. We could then chase down Boba Fett before being cut off by the ray shield, but this time instead of just seeing her sleeping, we see Boba Fett pulling her away as she has this moment of surprise and confusion before having a Leia-esque moment trying to warn us of the ambush as Starkiller calls out to her. We then quickly run to find an alternate path before getting jumped by the Terror Troopers, and after besting them, we make our way over to the hangar and see Boba Fett escaping. Man. So here's the thing, I don't normally list out changes I would like to see in a level in this way because it sort of feels like Monday morning quarterbacking. Obviously, anyone can find issues with a level after the fact, but the reason I did it here is because all of these thoughts were going through my head literally as I was playing it. And I have no clue how anyone even just looking at the scripting for this level could have thought that this was the right way of doing it. And again, it bothers me so much because I really enjoy multiple aspects of it. The aesthetics of the environment, and even the idea of the enemies to a certain extent are awesome. It's one of those levels that had no reason for being this bad. If I'm seeming way overly critical here, please let me know in the comments below. But man, did this level just rub me the wrong way, and instantly made me lose faith in the story going forward. However, at this point, I was still holding out hope that it could be somewhat salvaged, or at the very least impress me with some of the future boss fights. And speaking of boss fights, why don't we go ahead and take a look at that giant droid we saw tearing through the ship earlier.
It has shields. You need to find a way to disable them.
So first off, cool sound effects and cool design. Unfortunately, that's pretty much all that's cool about it. I mean, I see what they were trying to go for, and I don't mind the idea of us having to do different tasks to bring down the shield so that we can do damage, but the inclusion of these smaller terror droids here just makes this so tedious and irritating. There is always a fine line when making a boss fight where it needs to have some degree of challenge in order to feel rewarding, but that challenge can't be in the form of something that ruins the momentum of the fight. And the Terror Droid's grapple does just that, making us have to stand in place to fight off a droid only to take a few steps and do it again. It's less challenging and more just annoying. At least with the Gorog, it had us learn and memorize its basic moves to consistently dodge his attacks, keeping the fight moving and for us to feel relatively in control of what was happening. But here, that sense of control gets taken away during each grapple, and to add insult to injury, it barely even affects the difficulty of the fight at all and just slows us down. On top of that, they of course have to have us do the thing that we've done 100 times up to this point of putting the coils back into their ports and powering them back on. Now, we do end up getting a moment of hope here when we bring its health down enough and actually jump on top of it to control it ourselves, as terror droids start appearing all around us. And this should be cool, using its lasers and size to crush all of them. But just look at this. Does this even look like it has good controls? I mean, I thought the AT-STs in the Jedi Knight games controlled poorly, but this is just abysmal. Either make this a fun and engaging moment or just add a sick-ass QuickTime event instead. And again, I am someone who much prefers being in control during moments like this. However, if you can't do it right, then just don't do it at all. Anyways, we drive the walker into this power generator, breaking it apart and somehow not destroying the ship itself right before we hop out of hyperspace.
We're nearing Camino. All ships route power to forward deflector shields.
Alright, so fortunately I can finally go back to talking about things I like again. First off, though the story for how we got to this space engagement is pretty bad, I'm not going to complain that much when we get to see more space combat. By the way, in the novel, the one and only Wedge Antilles is out there, and he has a pretty important role in the story as well. Unfortunately, like most things from the novel, none of that is in the game at all. Really wish we could have at least had some kind of moment where we could hear his name mentioned or something, but oh well. It is a pretty cool idea seeing everything from the perspective of inside the capital ships, seeing them duke it out with laser cannons as Leechcraft board attempting to overrun the ship. I don't think Leechcraft is the Star Wars term, but whatever. They attach to the ship's hull and start pouring out enemies. And speaking of enemies, this is where we get introduced to a new one, the Saber Guard. Technically speaking, we actually know almost nothing about them, except that they are part of a secret security force here on Kamino. However, you have probably already noticed that their saber style is the same as ours. Also, that their voice has that weird distorted warble sound, same as the Sith acolytes we fought earlier. I'm pretty sure most of you are already putting 2 and 2 together for who these strange new enemies might actually be, but let's not get too ahead of ourselves, and instead get back to defending the ship. So yeah, for some reason the second Walker wave kicked my ass a couple times. I mean, once I remembered, oh yeah, we have Force Fury, it was a lot easier, but it's still a pretty good little engagement. Also, I really love how the Walkers get here. The idea of using our ship's hangar bay to lock in place these heavy transport craft is really cool. I can just easily imagine how the Empire would use this to secure a foothold in the hangars of an enemy ship to quickly overwhelm it from the inside out. Now, this does fly in the face of standard Imperial naval tactics. However, this is a special fleet that's stationed over what is in some ways a hidden world, so screw it. Let the fleet have some unorthodox tactics, it's pretty fun. So to be honest, by this point, thanks to the level's strong start, I was actually pretty hopeful for what the rest of the level had in store. But then we went right back into treading old ground with very little to add. We wind up fighting our way through the same engine room from before with riveting encounters like this one. I mean, just look at this action. Also, why is the solution for finding our way through here involve us literally destroying parts of the engine of our own flagship? I'm just imagining Coda standing on the bridge wondering what the hell is going on down here. We eventually make our way back to that platforming section from earlier, which is just great. But at least around this point, I did start experimenting with the mind trick power a bit, which made this boring section a lot more entertaining.
You will shoot your friends.
I will shoot my friends.
My god, that is dark. Either way, we keep going until we reach what is possibly the laziest new enemy of the game.
Imperial boarding pods detected in all sectors.
Yep, we simply have a reskinned war droid. I mean, this time it has fire, so it's totally different than before. Just come on, it even has the same kind of ranged attack as the cryo version, it's just lazy. Even the finishing move is pretty much the same as the original, with us just cutting the valve so its own weapon kills itself. I feel like they wanted to have something new here, but ran out of time and just buffed the stats of the original war droid, gave it a new coat of paint, changed the visual effects, and called it a day. I probably wouldn't be so critical of them if it wasn't for how much they are overused in this level, with us immediately going through multiple rooms of them. It takes an already enemy and makes them so much more annoying. Fortunately, the level does pick up again after this, with us clearing out enemies from the turbo cannon rooms. My only real complaint in these areas is that it really feels like we are just all alone on this ship at this point. Since we've taken much of it back, why not include more rebels in these sections fighting as well, instead of them just dying immediately as we enter? Obviously, they wouldn't be able to do that much against a war droid, but maybe have it like Republic Commando, where if we do manage to save them, they could give us some extra dialogue. Even if it's something as simple as, "I can't believe it's another Jedi like Coda, we're saved!" You know, just something to make this section feel a bit more lively and connected to the battle as a whole. Again, we do see a few rebels at times, like towards the end of the level here, but they're just so few and they die so quickly since they are surrounded by walkers and snipers, so it might as well just be a scripted sequence at this point.
Direct hit! God! The main cannon is offline. We're dead in the water without it. See what you can do.
Do I look like an engineer, General?
You're gonna look like orbital debris if you don't get that gun back online. Just get up there and do what you can.
So this is a nice little over-the-top moment of us just amping up the main gun. It really doesn't make that much sense if you sit down and think on it too much, but it's one of those cases where I think the rule of cool just wins out here.
Great shot! Now get up here!
Unfortunately, the rule of cool is quickly thrown out for the rule of lazy, with this just terrible portion of us spamming attacks while terror droids pour over us. I don't get it. The cannon was a cool moment. Why not end the level on a high note? I swear, it sometimes feels like there was someone in LucasArts intentionally giving them bad ideas to try and sabotage the fun of this game.
We're getting ripped apart up here! Order the retreat!
No! We won't get another chance to take this target. Keep pressing the attack. Planetary shield is preventing any kind of ground assault. We can't hold out much longer.
And the ship is falling apart. We've already lost Deck 8 through 12.
Head to the Rogue Shadow. I'm pretty sure those shields can't survive a direct hit from a cruiser.
Abandoned ship! Abandoned ship! Are you sure about this?
That's the only thing I can think of. You just be ready to clean up after me.
It's a straight shot to the planet below, but you'll need to clear a path.
Okay, so clearly this was supposed to be their big iconic moment, similar to pulling down the Star Destroyer in the first game. However, though pulling the Star Destroyer down wasn't the most engaging gameplay-wise, it at least was gameplay. While this is just a quick-time event, mashing buttons as we just watch along. Though I will admit, it is pretty amazing to look at, and the scene of Starkiller falling to the planet with the ship crashing in front of him is cinematic as hell. And at this point in the game, I really don't mind its lack of gameplay here, just because at the very least, it feels like a very polished concept that fulfills the idea of truly unleashing the force that the series promises. But unfortunately, like all the positives in this game, they had to go and screw it up by ending this interactive cutscene in the most ridiculous of ways possible. Okay, come on. I know Starkiller survives things he shouldn't all the time, but this is beyond even anime levels of ridiculousness. Except, unlike anime, this isn't even pleasant to look at. I mean, really, take a moment and look at this. What angle is this TIE fighter even flying at? Why are these slipstream effects going at different directions to the movement of the TIE? How is he able just to spin the TIE around in circles like that? Again, the issue isn't that it's over the top. Jumping out the tower in the beginning of the game was also over the top, and it was awesome. The issue is, while that looked and felt cool as hell, this is just a silly concept that looks even more ridiculous than it sounds, with bad camera angles and awkward looking physics that contrast terribly with the high quality cinematic moment we just experienced. Now, with all that said, this is one of the moments of the game that I think everyone is obligated to replay through at least once. All because how can you not want to replay through it as one of the greatest Star Wars characters ever, Admiral Akbar.
It's a trap!
I hope this is worth it. We've committed everything to this assault.
She's worth it, General.
This is bigger than you and Juno, boy. We're fighting a war!
This is your war, General. I'm only here for one reason.
So the return to Kamino is a difficult level to talk about, all because it feels like some portions of it were very well thought out and designed, while other parts feel like they were only given a day to work on. This is also where the already mismanaged story starts to just fall all over itself like a Jenga tower. I know some of you might think I'm beating a dead horse still bringing up the story at this point, but man, sometimes that horse just really deserves to be beaten. It's so clear they had some kind of concept for how Starkiller and Coda were supposed to bounce off one another here, with Coda focusing on the war effort, while Starkiller obviously just wants Juno. but I swear, they had no idea on how to actually implement it. The start here isn't too bad, with us fighting in the same courtyard we escaped from in the beginning of the game, except this time we have multiple walkers and Imperial troops all throughout the wreckage that we need to clear, while also having to avoid the turbo cannons firing at us. It's one of those moments that isn't necessarily hard, however feels very rewarding thanks to the variety of things being thrown at us. The walkers are dealt with pretty quickly thanks to Force Fury, and with a little platforming we can rip apart the turbo cannons before continuing inside the cloning facility, where we can hear a pretty funny Episode 5 callback as Coda's troops join the battle.
Rebel troops have entered the base. Rebel troops have entered the...
Imperial troops have entered the base. Imperial troops have entered...
Starkiller, we're in the security center across from you. After we take out these Imperials, we'll deactivate the security screens in your sector.
So fortunately, the following rooms are pretty well done as well, and it's pretty cool that Coda is fighting across the way with us occasionally helping him out. However, the dialogue between Coda and Starkiller seems kind of scattered. Again, they want there to be this conflict with us both here for alternative reasons, which is a good concept, but it never feels believable and instead feels kind of half-assed. It's hard to explain in a video, and I have rewritten this portion multiple times now trying to find the best way to articulate why I feel this way. But the best way I can explain it is that playing through, I felt no real sense of urgency, or even a feeling that a greater battle was taking place outside of what we were doing here personally. And it seemed like in each interaction with Coda, they never really had a clear idea of what they wanted him to feel, with him sometimes acting like it's no big deal that we're prioritizing Juno, but then in the very next scene, he'll be yelling at us to help him instead.
Having trouble, General?
Just get over here. This isn't as easy as it looks.
What do you see?
Vader has her. There, at the top of the city.
The main access ways to the central city are locked down. I don't know how we're going to get up there.
I'll find a way, General.
Starkiller, I know you want to find Juno, but we need your help. One Jedi could turn the tide of any war.
I'm only here for Juno, General.
Blast it! We need you in the front lines!
The Imperials have regained control of the security centers. We're going to suffer heavy casualties.
It's weird. Why have them bring this issue up to us after we just left, instead of having this discussion in the cutscene itself? It just makes this whole thing feel scattered and not really well thought out, and has the unintended consequence of making Coda's character never really feeling real in this portion of the game, which is a shame because he's actually one of my favorite Legends characters. But here, we leave him behind, and I really don't feel anything for him. Now, while the inside of the facility had some pretty fun and interesting combat encounters, the outside here is where we really start to see some of this polish begin to fade. This long outside portion is just biodroids and rocket walkers on a single walkway. Just standard boring fare. However, there is at least a decent war droid encounter not far after, where the terror droids try to lock you in place while the war droid closes the distance. The war droids have been overused already by this point, but at least here they're in locations that increase their lethality, making them much more interesting to fight. We also see the return of the Sith acolytes around this section, and things start to become a lot more clear about who they, as well as the Saber Guards, actually are. It first starts with Starkiller realizing that these cloning pods have Force-sensitive beings in them, causing him to reach out to Coda to inform him of this terrifying development.
What is this place? General, are you still there? Proxy, come in. Do you read me?
Someone answer me. General, do you copy?
Yeah. We were able to hold them off. Barely.
Okay, quiet, Coda. Listen, there are thousands of them. He's cloning an army. I can feel them. They're like me. They're strong in the Force.
What are you talking about?
He's cloned an army.
That's impossible. We're on our way.
So if this moment was in a vacuum, I would really like it a lot. The idea of Starkiller kind of abandoning Coda and his forces to nearly being wiped out, and then being so unnerved by something that he's willing to reach out to those who he in a way betrayed, is good writing. And Coda at first being irritated and angry at Starkiller, but then instantly understanding the ramifications of what he is saying really hammers in the importance of the moment. But again, it's all about the implementation here. It never really felt like we actually left Coda behind, because in some scenes, it seems like Coda totally understands and partially supports us in our decision, while in others, he just doesn't. We also already helped him quite a bit through most of the level as is, so it never really feels like we did anything wrong by going after Juno now. There is a solution that could have maybe made the player feel more invested in this back and forth with Coda, but we'll come back to that one just a little bit later. For now, we proceed to do some extremely tedious platforming going further up this tower, and oh man is it boring. They do try to include a few moments being jumped by acolytes and saber guards, but they are far from a challenge at this point and really feel more like filler to pad out the runtime here.
What does he plan to do with all of them?
Nothing if we have any say about it.
I wonder if he's here somewhere.
Who?
The original Starkiller.
We don't know what you're looking at yet. I told you, no one can clone a Jedi.
I hope you're right.
It is kind of funny that even after seeing all these acolytes and saber guards running around a cloning facility with Force-sensitive clones in pods, Coda is still insisting that Jedi cannot be cloned. Don't get me wrong, I still sort of side with Coda on this one, but at this point, all the evidence is pointing to they 100% can be cloned. Also, I like Starkiller kind of reminding us, oh yeah, you think you're a clone, that's right. I mean, he's had almost no character growth involving this plot point at all throughout this game, with the only slight semblance of growth happening during that shoehorned in scene with Yoda, so you'd be forgiven if you forgot all about it.
Don't go in there alone. The Dark Lord is waiting for you.
She's close, General. I am not stopping.
We're losing your signal, Starkiller. Just stop!
I'm done arguing, General. I have to do this. Juno! Juno! Where is she? Say something!
They are the memories of a dead man.
Vader! Come out! Juno!
Who are you?
Juno, it's me!
You're a monster. A thing.
Juno, please!
Now this is something I 100% can get behind. It's simple and slightly gimmicky, but this scene of us walking through this cloning lab as Starkiller has what can only be described as a full mental breakdown, seeing and hearing things that aren't even there, is fantastic. This is also one of those situations where I really wish I could play the music they have going on here without having to worry about copyright concerns, because man does it sell the atmosphere so well. It's that very melancholy track from episode 3, and I'll try to play a short snippet of it here just so you know which one I'm talking about.
You're Vader's puppet. Just a body filled with the memories of a dead man.
Okay, so I tried to make it longer, but my first upload got flagged. Yay, YouTube. Anyway, this bit right here is what was heavily teased in the trailer for the game. A mentally broken Starkiller desperately trying to hold together his own sanity. And if I'm being honest, had they done something like this on Dagobah, I probably wouldn't have been so harsh on its inclusion. Of course, moments like this should be held back a bit in order to not turn your game into a walking simulator, but this one right here sells what the story should have been so well. And because of that, it was actually one of the highlights of my first playthrough.
I knew it was only a matter of time before you returned. Now you will surrender to me, or you will die here where you were created.
So we are finally at our rematch with Vader. Though, unfortunately, as much as I love the environment here, This fight I thought was painfully boring. First off, the whole fight is us just doing a little bit of damage and then Vader hopping away, throwing stuff at us as we try and follow, which really makes him feel a lot less imposing as a character. Also, the combat for the duel feels far less engaging than how it felt in the first game, which is kinda weird since the overall gameplay for everything else has felt far better. But here, most of the attacks do little damage or even elicit any kind of reaction at all, even if we activate something like Force Fury. The only way to really move the fight forward is to just wait for these saber clash moments where we actually have a chance to do some serious damage. Again, like with other parts of the game, it feels like we're being corralled into experiencing this fight in a very particular way, instead of just allowing it to have a more natural flow. It just feels very restricting for a game titled The Force Unleashed. The only real interesting part here is when Vader releases these half-baked clones to start attacking us.
You will bow before me. Kill him.
So if you can't tell, the clones are using the exact styles of the Sith Acolytes and Saber Guards, all but confirming that those units have actually been the more stable clones from this facility. They may be weaker than the original Starkiller, but definitely stable enough to be garrisoned on other planets and serve on Star Destroyers, meaning the mental breakdowns have at least in some way been solved. However, due to the warbled nonsense they say when fighting them, it's possible they still aren't totally mentally there. At least not to the extent that you could call them true clones of Starkiller, which is pretty much what Coda has been saying this whole time, that there is something inherently different about Jedi that makes creating a true clone almost impossible. Now, I know someone might bring up Luke's clone from the book Last Command, where they used his severed hand to create Luke with 2 U's. However, it's also worth mentioning that a lot of the early EU was retconned as the prequel era was created. We talked a little bit about the tier system of Star Wars canon in the first game, so I won't bore you with it here, but I would argue that when looking at these minor retcons that happened, how cloning functioned was probably among them, given how heavily it was involved in the prequels. Especially when in that book, the very idea of Thrawn using clone soldiers was considered pretty crazy, since back then cloning was not as heavily established in the lore. Either way, back to the actual fight, it again feels sort of lazy and just not very fun. The clones are neat at first, but become more annoying as it keeps going on. I will admit, it is fun using mind control on them at least, and if unlike me you actually upgraded it, then you can actually take control of multiple of them at once. One strange thing is, as we climb up the facility, it seems like it's bursting into flames despite us doing fairly little damage ourselves. This again could have been made into an interesting moment of Coda's forces assaulting this portion of the facility, destroying much of it, where Vader could have then toyed with us, telling us to look below as Imperial reinforcements start to flood in, killing many of the rebels. Maybe even making us choose between vengeance or the rebellion, similar to the first game, or at least allow it to add to the anger and despair that Starkiller is feeling. Again, there are just so many missed opportunities here for some awesome cinematic moments to exist. But instead, we just get this.
Should have stayed here.
What the hell was that? I mean, that hit even sounded like something from the Three Stooges. And look at it! Vader doesn't even hit anything! I mean, come on, you couldn't animate like a punch or something? What is this? You might as well just add the old Batman effects to it at this point. Even that force push was the most limp-wristed thing I have ever seen. Just what were they thinking signing off on this? You really want to know how bad this is? I was playing through this downstairs on the family TV while my wife was sitting next to me feeding our kid, and even she busted out laughing at this scene. And this mess just keeps continuing on from here.
Where is she?
Juno.
Bow before me, or she dies.
What Wait! I will do your bidding. Just let her go.
Find and kill General Kota. If you refuse, the woman dies. You will return to me and give yourself to the dark side. If you resist, she dies. And when your training is complete, you will hunt down and execute the rebel leaders. If you fail, she dies.
What is this? So let me get this straight. Vader's plan was just to hold Juno hostage to make Starkiller do his bidding, saying that he'll kill her if he refuses. And then Juno goes, with a lightsaber, and Vader decides, oh no, my plan to hold her captive has been foiled. I guess I just have to kill her now and throw her out of a fucking window, completely removing my leverage over Starkiller. You're telling me Vader couldn't just slap a bitch and take the lightsaber from her? Really? Just come on, man. This whole scene makes no sense. Also, what the fuck happened to Boba Fett? Was he really just included for the marketing? I mean, the posters literally show us fighting him. Just what the hell, dude? And another thing. Okay, I'm sorry, I went off script a bit there, but the rant is somewhat justified. It is very clear they had no idea how to finish this story. Almost nothing here makes any sense at all at this point. Even the storyline of us possibly being a clone seems to have taken a back seat. It still exists, just in a much more minor role without any real development for it. It's sad, really, because like I've been saying for a while now, the foundations of a good story are here. Even Vader using Juno as leverage over Starkiller is interesting due to Anakin turning into Vader because of the death of the woman he loved. And there was a lot of good possibilities of dialogue options for Vader where he could actually project some of his own feelings over the loss of Padme onto Starkiller. And strange enough, some of this is done during the second phase of the duel.
She loved a dead man. She would have never loved you.
That line is fantastic, but easy to overlook mid-gameplay. I mean, him telling Starkiller that Juno loved a dead man and that she could never love who he is now is a direct correlation to how Vader probably feels about Padme, where the man who she loved is dead, and even if she returned, she could never love who he is today. Moments like this are great, but they should have been woven more into the story itself rather than just relegated to a throwaway line mid-fight. Speaking of the fight, I will admit this portion does feel a lot better than the prior one gameplay-wise, even if it is extremely easy, with us just whacking him up against some of these lightning rods. We also get to go back to having some QuickTime events that feel a lot more reminiscent of the first game, which is nice.
You've taken everything from me!
Your feelings for her are not real.
They are real to me! Wait! You want him dead as much as I do? Yes, but not yet!
Not until he's told us the Empire's secrets.
You want to take him prisoner?
To a hidden rebel base where we can interrogate him. Put him on trial for crimes against the true Republic. And then we'll execute him. To show the galaxy that we don't need to fear him any longer.
If I let him live, he'll hunt me forever.
He is the only one who knows if Starkiller really survived. He can't tell you if he's dead.
Strike me down.
So this is our big light or dark side choice. And like always, we will first take a look at the light side option before we make our way over to the, well, interesting dark side one.
Get something to hold him.
Yes, General.
I can't revive her.
I'm sorry. It's not your fault. I should have stayed here.
We're alive. We'll send a dozen small freighters in all directions. Even if someone finds out we have him, they won't know which ship to follow.
Excellent. And the security detail?
We have it covered, Your Highness. We'll contact you again once we have Vader safely locked away on Dantooine.
Good. This is a turning point for the Alliance. You should be proud. May the Force be with you.
You know, this scene isn't actually too bad, but unfortunately, it also doesn't really feel earned. None of the characters really feel like they have undergone any development at all throughout the game, so it just doesn't carry the same emotional impact it should. However, after Juno and Coda inform Leia they are sending Vader over to Dantooine for interrogation, which, by the way, is a very solid callback to Episode 4 where they mentioned a deserted rebel base on the planet, we do get one of the better scenes of the game.
I let you live. You tell me I'm a clone, but I chose to spare you. Oh, maybe Coda's right. Maybe this is all a trick, a way to get me so confused that I'd forget who I really am and become your slave again. But either way, I let you live. I've finally broken your hold over me.
As long as she lives, I will always control you.
Prepare for light speed.
Okay, so part of me is still mixed on the whole idea of Vader being able to be held prisoner in the first place. I mean, I always kind of enjoyed seeing Vader as a nearly indestructible force of nature, and unlike the first game, his defeat here seems not really complete. However, I guess that could also be just part of a larger plan, since we do see Boba Fett chase after them. In fact, there's an interview with Sam Witwer where he talks about some of the ideas that were being tossed around for a third game. And one of those ideas had it where it turned out that every fight from 1 and 2, Vader was simply toying with Starkiller and never really going all out.
Funny enough, I know that the intention that we had was, because the end of Force Unleashed, he cuts off Vader's hand and captures him and stuff like that. I'm not comfortable sharing everything that we discussed, but the idea was that that was the biggest mistake ever, and that Vader, like he was toying with Luke, that the Force Unleashed 1 and 2 games were all about Vader toying with Starkiller, and at some point there would be a confrontation where Starkiller's fighting Vader, and everything that worked before is not working now. He's like, but I cut off your hand. He's like, that wasn't my hand. I have no hand. And, and Starkiller's fighting, and Starkiller says, how are you doing this? And Vader answers simply with whatever the first line in the original Star Wars script was, which was, I believe it was, I am Lord Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith. And it was something along those lines, and that ends the conversation. And Starkiller is no match for this guy. So there's a little spoiler for an alternate universe.
Man, that would have been one hell of a twist that, if done right, I could totally get behind. Anyway, when it comes to the actual dialogue between Starkiller and Vader, I think it's great, especially when you keep in mind that it was the life of a woman that tied Anakin to Palpatine. So of course Vader would look at Starkiller's relationship with Juno as a weakness that can be exploited in a similar fashion. Again, I really wish there was more of this. However, I can't exactly say I was thrilled with the ending, just due to the fact that nothing was ever answered. Nor was there ever any real personal development of Starkiller coming to terms with the possibility of him maybe being a clone. His attitude about it literally does a 180 from the scene just prior to this. Some of this might have been alleviated a little bit had we had at least one scene of him and Juno saying something together, but he never really gets any moment to work through his situation at all. And unfortunately, as far as the main story goes, this is it for his character. The third game was never released, causing us all to have to forever speculate on what he might truly be. Now, by this point, I think I'm firmly in the camp that he is the original Starkiller, but has mind wiped by Vader. The ending here doesn't really make any sense if he is a clone. I mean, why would Vader want a Starkiller clone to serve him so badly after going rogue? Towards the beginning of the game, he implied killing us was no big deal for him, and that he has done it many times to other clones before. So if he still has the original Starkiller's body, why not hold Juno with the intent to kill the Starkiller clone the moment he lets his guard down, and then slaughter the rebels on Kamino himself? Unless, of course, there's a reason why he actually has to keep this Starkiller alive. And if he is the original, then that would make sense. The clone's quality would probably start to deteriorate over time without a supply of the original DNA, probably even more so considering it's of a Force user. And even if the cloning process turns out to never be perfected, you always would have the original to wipe the mind of to try and try again to indoctrinate. There just seems to be far more pointing to him being the original to me than the opposite, at least as far as what has been presented in the games. Obviously, if you want me to take a look at the novels, feel free to comment below. But there is one other reason I feel pretty certain this is the original Starkiller, and strange enough, that is somewhat tied to how the dark side ending works out.
I lied when I told you the cloning process had not been perfected. faced your final test.
What is thy bidding, my master?
Take his starfighter, scour the far reaches of the galaxy, find the last of the rebels, and destroy them.
As you wish.
Alright, so this version's Darkseid ending isn't our typical Darkseid ending. Normally in games, the Darkseid choice is an alternate universe ending of the story like shown in the first game, where Starkiller's drive for revenge causes the destruction of all he loves. However, here, instead of it being an alternate universe ending of the story, it is an alternate universe from start to finish. It requires things to happen outside of our control for it to exist. Us deciding to kill Vader here really wouldn't matter. If his evil clone existed at all, then he would have been able to kill all of us regardless of Starkiller's decision to spare Vader or not. In some of the additional extra content that can be unlocked in the game, we can actually see a comic of Vader training this evil Starkiller clone, and even showing him the original Starkiller's body during this time. These comics are actually pretty great, with them first seeming like they take place around our Starkiller, until towards the end when it's revealed to be the training of the evil clone instead. It's a pretty fun story with good artwork and fully voiced.
When the moment arrives, show no weakness. Are you ready, my apprentice?
Yes, my master. I was made for this.
Now, since again, the Darkseid and Lightside endings are actually alternate universes from start to finish, I would infer this. The Lightside ending takes place in a universe where this is the original Starkiller, and as we have seen throughout the game, the cloning process was never really fully perfected. Meanwhile, the Darkseid ending takes place in a universe where Starkiller did die. However, Vader was able to perfect the process for creating clones, creating this universe's Starkiller. That still causes some problems in the story as I mentioned before, but does work as a fun what-if situation. With that said, I personally don't really care for the Darkseid ending here. Mostly because how it ends has nothing to do with Starkiller's actions causing it, which makes it not really a Darkseid ending as much as just a different ending. However, there could have been an easy solution to all of this. Earlier in the level, I talked about how I wished we could have engaged more with the back and forth with Coda in regards to whether or not to focus on Juno or the Rebellion, and I really feel like this was a missed opportunity to take a page from the Great Dark Forces 2 and have our decisions throughout the level impact which ending we get. For those of you who have never played Dark Forces 2 or watched my video on it, the game actually kept track of your morality based on what force powers you used and if you decided to kill civilians or not. And towards the end of the game, Kyle would then choose the light side or dark side path automatically based on how you played up to that point. It was a feature that was really amazing to see done as far back as 1997 and still took me by surprise when I played through it for the first time for that video. Now, obviously, I'm not saying they should have tracked our choices all throughout the game, but what if instead they did something as simple as adding a lot of difficult enemies and obstacles preventing us from helping Coda that we could then choose to skip if we really wanted to? The dialogue and cutscenes between those parts and the ending could then change accordingly. Maybe if we didn't help Coda at all, when we try to radio him about the clones we found, no one would answer, implying they didn't make it. While instead, if we helped him every time up until we separated to look for Juno, he would be encouraging us to go after her and be in good spirits knowing the day was about to be won. The light or dark side options could then progress naturally from there, where the light side has Coda in some way save us from a much more menacing Vader by simply distracting him or something, while the dark side option would have us being absolutely destroyed by him, forcing us to see the rebel attack crushed and Juno killed before our very eyes, before Vader imprisons us inside the facility once more, presumably to continue on with his twisted experiments. There's actually quite a few ways you can naturally implement a light side versus dark side ending here, but instead, we either get strange evil clones stabbing us in the back, or an okay but anticlimactic ending where none of the plot points have progressed much at all. Again, just feels like a slightly wasted opportunity in my opinion. But hey, that's it for the main story. And I know I have said this a dozen times over by this point, but man, is it just so disappointing watching something with such promise fall short this much. Of course, despite all of this, I still have to give credit to Hayden Blackman for what he managed to accomplish while only being given 3 weeks to write the script. I criticize, but I probably couldn't write one if you gave me a year to do it, and I can totally see what he was trying to go for here. The idea of a more personal story with mystery and intrigue could work really well for Starkiller. And I truly believe after playing this that had he been given more time to really sit down and think about how to get the plot from point A to point B, we could have gotten one of the best Star Wars stories ever. Again, the bones of it are all here, but as anyone who has ever had to write a paper in school knows, if you get stuck in a situation where you have to rush the assignment, then it doesn't matter how good your idea was, because it's not going to turn out as well as it could have had you just been able to take your time. And unfortunately, that was the one thing Hayden Blackman, as well as the rest of the development team, never had on their side. So despite being done with the story, we're not quite done with the game as a whole. There are still a couple additions here to keep us playing just a little bit longer. And starting us off, we have the return of the iconic Dark Side DLC. So one of the coolest parts about the first game was the Dark Side DLC missions that followed Starkiller after he was turned into the replacement for Vader. The 2 missions were for episode 4 and 5 and were a ton of fun to play through. And fortunately, the Force Unleashed 2 has its own version, where we instead follow the Darkseid clone being sent to Endor to stop the rebels. Well, so long as you're not playing on the PC, since for some reason, alongside the other issues with the PC version, they chose not to port over the DLC, which is insanely stupid. Again, do not buy the PC port of this game. It runs like crap and is missing content. It's just ridiculous. Either way, in this universe, Luke and Obi-Wan have already been killed, but Leia, Han, and Chewie are still over here doing their thing on the Force moon of Endor. The start here is a lot of fun with us finding the shuttle Tiberian before just tossing it aside. You might also notice we have what is pretty much the Darksaber as one of our options. It looks pretty cool and has the possibility of disintegrating enemies on contact. And oh boy, I cannot wait to try it out on some of these little bastards. So I gotta be honest, I feel a little bad here. I know the Ewoks get a lot of hate out there, but I can't help but love them. Then again, that's mainly because one of my cousins actually played an Ewok in episode 6, so I'm obviously gonna be a little biased. Funny enough, the combat here is actually some of the best in the game in my opinion. And the encounters are also pretty difficult as well thanks to the inclusion of these turrets and crazy amount of snipers keeping us on our toes. Pretty soon into the level we find Han and Chewie. And I get why Chewie is into ATST, but where on earth did Han get the rocket launcher from? So believe it or not, this was actually one of the more entertaining boss fights of the game. It's not that over the top compared to the others, but it was a lot of fun and actually made me feel like I had to understand the game's combat and movements in order to defeat them. In keeping with the Dark Side DLC tradition, you know we have to kill them in a pretty messed up way.
Chewie!
Princess, you go on. We'll cover you. You have to set those charges.
Understood. And thank you.
Again, I think it's pretty funny that a DLC mission has some of the more interesting combat encounters in the game. We start with this OK section with one of those satellite dish turrets, but soon after we move on to the shield generators themselves, and man did they make this place look huge. You never really get a good sense of scale for this place in the movie, so it's really cool seeing it up close like this. Plus, the combat here is just a lot of fun, especially seeing the Empire and the Rebels duking it out. We also get some really fun platforming as we navigate our way, destroying everything in our path. And overall, I have to say, this section right here is probably my favorite section in the entire game. Just great combat, fun platforming, and an amazing set piece. It's fantastic all around. But after fighting our way through the reactor, we of course finally catch up to Leia.
I don't know why you even bother.
There is much you fail to see, Sith. After my brother fell on Hoth, I fulfilled the destiny that he could not. Now I am a Jedi.
Hello, what have we here?
Well, I think I might have a new favorite Leia look. This first part of the fight wound up being really easy thanks to her just kinda glitching out for a moment, allowing us to simply rip her to shreds. However, for some reason after that portion, she decides to jump on a control panel and put us through what I can only describe as a Fusion Frenzy-like minigame. I don't exactly get what the point of this is or why Starkiller can't just jump away, but alright. Fortunately, the best part of this fight actually comes immediately after this.
But you have much to learn.
Okay, I'm not sure if it's just me, but I swear, everything about this fight is way more fun than the boss fights we got in the actual story. Us running around the top of the shield generator is a fantastic location, and the actual gameplay here feels much better than the duel with Vader. Leia feels like she's giving it everything she's got, and her using the structure around the stage to jump around attacking us from a distance, while still allowing us to try and knock her off is a cool way of utilizing the environment. Just everything about this fight from a gameplay perspective is way more enjoyable, and feels a lot more like what I was expecting this game's bosses to be like. Hell, even the QuickTime event feels higher quality than what we got in the main game. It's sad that they somehow made a fight with the Leia feel more engaging and epic than our fight with Vader, which is not something I ever thought I would say.
It's over, rebel scum.
A great day, Lord Vader. Today marks the death of the rebellion and the birth of a new era of peace for the Empire. There is but one last detail to take care of. Do you take me for a fool? Your feeble schemes to overthrow me using that pathetic clone of your former apprentice were pitifully obvious from their inception. Now, Skywalker, you will die. Captain Sarkley.
My liege?
Take your troops and destroy the clone.
Man, even the cliffhanger here is better than the main game. What the hell? Also, I have to point out, Sam Witwer's Palpatine impression has definitely improved since the first game. I didn't find it bad there or anything, but you can really see the improvement here. It might be shocking to say, but this DLC is probably the most entertaining thing The Force Unleashed 2 has in it. The gameplay is great, the environments have some cool features to interact with, and just overall it felt more engaging than the other levels of the game. So thankfully, it is at least nice to finish things out on a high note here. Well, sort of. You see, despite this being the only DLC there is for the game, there is one more thing it has for us to check out. These are the challenge stages, including all sorts of strange and at times pretty fun and interesting tests. I mentioned earlier that we have to unlock the comic series of the Dark Clone, and here's where we actually do that. By getting bronze or higher on any of these stages, we can get one of the comic sections. And if we get gold, we can even get some lightsaber crystals, which is actually how we had the Darksaber earlier. Many of the challenges range from endurance tests, funny objective types, or even just some crazy platforming. It's surprisingly fun and utilizes many of the game's mechanics in interesting ways, and is definitely worth at least checking out before exiting the game. So I've been really struggling with what my final thoughts here should be. I mean, I have already said it a dozen times over now that the game has the bones of something great here, and that something was shown to great effect through the trailers for the game. Now, I have heard some people say that the trailers were very misleading, and in some cases that's definitely true, especially when they show things not actually in the game itself. But overall, they seem to be in a lot of ways the game that the developers wanted to make. And had they been given more time, this could have been what we got, and potentially could have been an all-time great Star Wars story. But unfortunately, as it stands, this is just an absolute mess of a game. I really hate sounding so pessimistic over it, since as many of you already know, I'm normally a rather optimistic person. But with this, it's just tough. You see, watching someone who's bad at sports suck at basketball is one thing, but watching someone with amazing natural talents and such a strong foundation squander it all and fail where they 100% should have succeeded is just torture. It's not the broken story that tears at me, nor is it the repetitive enemies or even the very, very short campaign. What it is the unrealized potential that this so clearly had. So there we have it, the end of the Force Unleashed story. However, not quite the end of the games, since just like the first game, there was multiple versions made of the second one as well. And just like how Chrome Studio was responsible for making the Wii, PSP, and PS2 version of the first game, they were also responsible for making the second one too. So, should be really interesting going over and looking at that one. Plus, I believe InSpace, who made the DS version of the first game, which was actually surprisingly good, was also responsible for the DS version of the second one, which from what I heard is much different than you would expect, so should be cool to kind of go out and look at. So if you want to make sure you see those videos, of course make sure you subscribe to the channel. Also, I just wanted to say this real quick. Thank you all so much for all the support throughout this last year. I mean, the channel has grown more than I ever expected it to. It's at a point where it's actually making some money, you know, not like a ton of money, but enough to cover my grocery bills, which, considering the fact that I have 3 kids, obviously that's not a small amount. So truly, I really do appreciate it. It's just, this past year has been so cool seeing just how much views some of these videos have been getting. Obviously the Jedi Academy video like shot up like crazy, which was so cool to see. Just thank you so much, and I can't wait to see what happens this year as well. Oh, and Happy New Year's to everyone out there. Hope your resolutions have been going good so far. I know for me, mine I think is going to be to try to upload a bit more often. I know I've been kind of like, oh, sometimes it's 1 month, sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's like 3. So I'm going to try to keep it, you know, below a 2-month average going forward. We'll see how that goes. Again, a bunch of kids, big family. Yeah, I stay pretty busy around here, but I'm going to try to start uploading hopefully, you know, once every month, if not once every 2 months. So I'm going to try to keep it below that 2-month average. We'll see how it goes. However, there is one video that I will be doing this year that I know you've been asking for. It's going to be a long video. It's going to take a long time to make. That one might break that rule, but given what the game is that I'll be going over, I think you'll understand. I think you will. I know, you know which one I'm talking about. You know which one I'm talking about. Either way, again, thank you so much for watching this. I really do appreciate it. If you haven't already, you know, you can always check out the full video we did on the first Force Unleashed game. You can check that one out over here to my left, or of course, wherever YouTube is recommending over here to my right. Again, just thank you so much. I really do appreciate it, and I hope to see you all again real soon. Peace.